So, picture this. A guy spends 3 hours picking his best photos for a dating app. He's got the front-facing smile, the group photo to prove he has friends, the artsy Paris shot he took while he was mostly lost and hungry, and the mountain hiking picture from that one time he went outside in 2019. He hits publish, opens the app, and waits. And waits. And waits some more. Meanwhile, his female friend grabs the first photo in her camera roll. It's fine, whatever. Uploads it in literally 40 seconds. Opens the app, and her phone starts vibrating like it's having a medical emergency. So here's the question nobody talks about. Why? Why does the same app at the same time give two completely different human beings two completely opposite experiences? I ran a simulation with 1,000 fake dating profiles to find out, and what I found genuinely messed with my head. Stick around. Let me tell you about two friends who download a dating app on the same day. The first one is a guy, and he does what every guy does. He treats this like a job application. He spends a genuinely embarrassing amount of time curating his profile. First, the main photo, he retakes it 12 times until the lighting hits just right and he looks like a person who has his life together, which is debatable. Then he digs through his camera roll for a group photo, because apparently being surrounded by other humans is supposed to signal social viability. Then he finds a photo from a trip he took to Paris 2 years ago. Not because he's cultured. Honestly, he mostly just ate croissants and complained about his feet. But because Paris looks great on a dating profile. And then, the finishing touch, a mountain climbing photo. He went once. His knees hurt for a week. But in the photo, he looks rugged and adventurous. And that's what matters. After all this work, after this meticulous construction of a carefully optimized human being, he hits publish and feels quietly confident. He's done everything right. The second friend is a woman, and her approach is different. She doesn't feel particularly safe putting a ton of personal information out there on the internet, which, honestly, fair enough. She grabs the first decent photo in her phone, fills out a couple of basic fields, and she's done in under a minute. No strategy, no mountain photos, just, here I am, hello. They both start swiping. They both hope for the best. By the end of the day, when the woman checks her phone, the little like counter is completely full. Not just a few, overflowing. Nearly every profile she swipes right on is an instant match. Her inbox starts filling up faster than she can read it. She goes from excited to curious to genuinely overwhelmed within about 45 minutes. This is not the chill dating experience she signed up for. For the guy, it's a completely different story. He checks his phone, then checks it again, then checks it one more time just to make sure the app is working properly. He's got a couple of likes, 0 matches. He starts wondering if his photos are bad. He wonders if he's bad. He puts so much effort into that profile, and here he is watching tumbleweeds roll through his inbox. What is going on? And here's the thing. That question is more interesting than it sounds on the surface, because these two people are equally real, equally trying, equally hopeful. They're using the exact same app, and yet they are having completely different psychological experiences. One person feels overwhelmed and mildly exhausted by attention. The other is quietly starting to question his self-worth. That's a pretty significant gap for an app that's supposed to be connecting people. The frustrating part is that dating apps are basically black boxes. The companies don't share much data about what's actually happening inside the system. It's very hard to get a clear picture of the math. But we can make pretty good educated guesses based on the little information that exists. And honestly, even those guesses are kind of wild once you lay them out. So, I built a simulation, 1,000 fake profiles pretending to be a dating app, and I started running experiments. I want to walk you through exactly what I did, because the results are not what you'd expect. And honestly, they made me look at these apps completely differently. I started with the most idealistic, unrealistic version of the world I could imagine. Equal numbers of men and women on the app. Everyone sees exactly 100 profiles per day. The algorithm shows everyone equally. And every user likes about 1 in 4 profiles, a 25% like rate across the board. I know. This sounds like a fairy tale version of a dating app. But you have to start somewhere. In this perfect pretend world, at the end of the day, men and women each get about 25 likes on average and about 6 matches. Nice, clean, balanced. Great. Now let's wreck it. The first thing that's actually true about real dating apps is that the gender ratio is nowhere near 50-50. I looked at user data from Tinder and Bumble, and in both cases, there were significantly more male users than female users. The ratio varies, but somewhere around 2 men for every 1 woman is a reasonable estimate, sitting roughly between the two platforms. So I updated the simulation. 2 men for every woman. Ran it again, and suddenly everything shifts. Because there are twice as many men, each woman is now getting twice the amount of likes she was getting before. The men, meanwhile, are getting half as many because they're splitting a smaller pool of women between more competitors. But here's where it gets genuinely interesting. Women are now receiving so many likes, averaging around 50, that they can't even see all the people who liked them. They only scroll through 100 profiles per day, and there are way more men in the queue than they can realistically get to. So matches stay low even though likes are surging. The attention is literally overflowing and spilling off the table. Men, on the other hand, are getting fewer likes, which creates a kind of quiet desperation. And desperation changes behavior. If you only have a slim chance of matching with someone, the logical response is to start liking more people. Cast a wider net. Be less picky. Hope that somewhere in that pile of profiles, someone swipes back. Which takes us to the second reason the math goes sideways. And this one's supported by real reporting. According to research cited by the New York Times, men on Tinder are nearly 3 times as likely to like a profile as women are. The specific numbers break down to something like men liking roughly 46% of the profiles they see, while women like around 14%. And that gap makes complete sense once you think about it. Women are overwhelmed with options and potentially dealing with some unpleasant or intrusive messages mixed in with the genuine ones. So they're selective. Men are undermatched, so they're generous. And that dynamic feeds itself in a loop. When I updated the simulation with these real-world-like rates, the numbers got dramatic. Women's average likes jumped to 92 per day. Men dropped to 7. And because men are liking nearly half of everything they see, those 7 likes translate to an average of about 3 matches per day. Women are averaging around 6. The gap has now more than doubled from where we started. But we're not done, because we still haven't accounted for the fact that not all profiles are treated equally by the people swiping. And this is the part that I think really explains why the average man's experience on a dating app feels so demoralizing. In 2017, the dating app Hinge published a Q&A on their website where one of their engineers shared some internal data, and the number that jumped out was this. About half of all the likes that men give go to just the top 25% of women, and about half of all the likes that women give go to just the top 15% of men. So a relatively small group of users is absorbing a huge chunk of the total attention. The rest of the pool is splitting up the leftovers. To model this in the simulation, I gave every fake profile an attractiveness score from 0 to 100, essentially a number that determines how likely they are to be liked each time their profile shows up. At 0, almost nobody swipes right. At 100, almost everybody does. I built the curve so that the top users get exponentially more attention while keeping the overall like averages the same. With those adjustments, about 50% of male likes went to the top 27% of women, and about 50% of female likes went to the top 10% of men. Pretty close to what Hinge reported. Now, here's the thing that surprised me when I ran this final version. The averages barely moved. Men still average around 7 likes. Women still average around 92. The numbers look the same. And the reason is that adding this inequality between individual users doesn't change how men and women behave as a group. They're still liking the same overall percentage of profiles. What changes is the distribution. The averages now mean almost nothing because the experience is wildly different depending on where you land on that attractiveness spectrum. So I looked at the median instead. The median is the experience of the person right in the middle, not the top, not the bottom, just the average ordinary user. And for men, the median number of likes received per day dropped all the way down to 1. 1 like, and matches, the median was 0. Think about that for a second. The experience that most men are having on a dating app, not the worst case, literally the middle of the bell curve, is one like a day and no matches. You can spend hours on this app and functionally get nothing back. Meanwhile, if you zoom in on the top 10% of male users, something really interesting happens. They're actually getting more matches than the top 10% of women. They get fewer likes overall. But because men as a group are so much less selective, those top male profiles turn their likes into matches at a higher rate. It's the one place in the whole system where men come out ahead. So where does all of this leave us? As I made the simulation more and more realistic, adjusting for the gender ratio, the different like rates, and the unequal distribution of attention, the average man's daily likes went from 25 to 12 to 7 to 1. That's a pretty brutal journey. And I want to be clear, none of this is an argument against dating apps. Meeting people online has genuinely become one of the most common ways couples get together, especially in the US. The apps work. Real relationships happen. Real people have found each other through them and are very happy. I'm not trying to convince anyone to delete anything. But what I do think is worth talking about is the psychological gap between what the app feels like and what the actual dating world looks like. Because the experience you have on a dating app is not a one-to-one reflection of your real-world romantic value, whatever that even means. And I think a lot of people, especially men, treat it like it is. A guy gets one like in a week and starts thinking, maybe I'm just not attractive. And that's a completely understandable reaction to have. But what the data actually says is, the system itself creates scarcity for men. You could be a perfectly interesting, good-looking, emotionally available human being and still get almost nothing. Because of math, because of the ratio, because of how likes are distributed. On the flip side, women are not having an easy ride either, in a different way. When a woman gets a match, she knows there's a very real chance the guy swiped right on basically everyone he saw. That match doesn't necessarily mean he's genuinely interested in her specifically. It might mean he's interested in the concept of someone responding to him. So women end up filtering through this massive pile of notifications trying to figure out who is actually paying attention versus who just has very enthusiastic thumbs. Both. Experiences are kind of exhausting when you zoom out and look at them honestly. One person is drowning in low-quality attention. The other is starving for any attention at all. And neither of those is what anyone was hoping for when they downloaded the app. There's also a cycle that makes the whole thing worse over time. Men get few matches, so they like more profiles, which floods women's inboxes, which makes women more selective, which gives men even fewer matches, which makes them like even more profiles. It's a loop with no obvious exit, and each iteration makes the extremes more extreme. I built this simulation to try to understand something that felt unfair in a way I couldn't fully articulate. And I think what I came away with is that the unfairness is real, but it's structural. It's baked into the math and the behavior patterns that emerge from that math, rather than being anyone's individual fault. The guy who can't get a match isn't failing. The woman who's overwhelmed isn't being unreasonable. They're both responding pretty logically to the environment the app created. If I had one actual takeaway from all of this, it's just be a little gentler with yourself when you look at your match count. That number is telling you about the geometry of a specific digital marketplace. It's not telling you anything definitive about who you are. And maybe log off and talk to someone in real life occasionally. I know, revolutionary advice. But seriously,